3,500 years ago, a king named Hammurabi in Mesopotamia, which is the land between the two rivers, Euphrates and Tigris rivers, he decided to write the law in stone. And it's where we get that written in stone euphemism from. This is the Code of Hammurabi. And he wrote down the laws. If you take a man's life, your life is subject to forfeit. If you take a slave's life, you must repay the cost of the slave. If you cut off someone's hand, you lose your hand. Okay? So the laws actually began being written down 3,500 years ago. Our Constitution is written law so that all people may understand it. We're familiar with the draconian law. Okay? You've heard the phrase, it's harsh, it's cruel, it's mean. Okay? That's pretty much what we know about Draco. He was a king in Greece, and that it was very harsh. On the other hand, can you really consider law harsh if you know what the penalty is prior to breaking it? Draco wrote his laws in stone on a huge wall in the middle of the city so that the people may know the law. If you know the law and you know what the punishments are, and you choose to break it, can you complain about the punishment? In the middle of Rome's city, they had 12 tables, all of the laws of the city. Again, that reinforcement of people need to know the law. We don't want to keep the laws secret. We don't want to say, anybody wearing red today has a $50 fine. You can't just make up law. Write it down for people to understand. Our 10 Commandments. Does anyone know where this relief is carved?
In front of the Supreme Court.
In front of our Supreme Court building. Moses, the lawgiver. It's dead center. You have other people that brought law to the world, but Moses is dead center. Okay? The simple laws. Don't commit murder. Don't steal. Love God, love your neighbor. The 10 Commandments are an incredible part of the laws that become the laws of America. And again, where were the 10 Commandments written? In stone. Permanence, the law. Everybody needs to know it. Once you have the idea of established law, that it seems like 3,500 years ago, Hammurabi's people needed laws. The Greeks needed laws. Rome needed laws. The Israelites needed law. There is something in the human condition that needs laws. We are a people that, unfortunately, in the human existence will try to subvert the law. We will try to take advantage of one another. We will react on instinct and maybe act out in aggression. We need to protect ourselves. And that's what law becomes. Law becomes the protection of the people. So then you start looking for principles. What is your law based in? And the principles of the law. Now you've seen up through Moses, Hebrew is taught in 7th grade. Mesopotamia is taught in 6th grade. Buddhism. Principles. Principles. Resist evil. Free your mind of evil. Work for the good of others. Again, we're looking at principles. And Buddhism is taught in 7th grade. And I'm thinking, our founding fathers had this knowledge also. They started realizing the importance of law, that we need law in a society, but we also started looking at principled law. What are we basing our law in? And they looked everywhere around the world for that information. Okay? Truth doesn't just exist here. It exists everywhere around the world. So where you can find truth and apply it, that's what our founding fathers were looking for. Okay? Islam. It's taken a beating right now. Okay? But there are still principles in the Nation of Islam. Our students learn the principles of Islam. Okay? Faith, prayer, fasting, giving, okay, charity, pilgrimage to act out on what your God is telling you. Faith, hope, charity. I know these things are familiar to us. Okay? So what our founding fathers started to do is look for principle. What do we base our laws in? They started realizing that no one is above the law. This is the Magna Carta, 1215. In feudal Europe, the castle times, the princesses, the white horses, and all that fun stuff, we had kings that would make laws on a certain day. They had wonderful laws, prima nocte, where they wanted to eradicate the Scots So a lord on a wedding night of a Scotsman could actually take the new bride and be with her that night. So hopefully she would give birth to a child of English descent and not Scottish descent. That the kings were above the law. The Magna Carta stated that no. Even if you are king or lord, you must follow the law. The law applies to the people in power also. John Locke, one of my favorite people in history. John Locke, and I love to tell the kids this when I'm in front of the class as students. John Locke wrote that everybody is entitled to life, liberty, and
Pursuit of property.
Property. Thomas Jefferson paraphrased John Locke. John Locke wrote life, liberty, and property. And when you think about it, property is kind of our pursuit of happiness. Some of us have boats, some of us have farms, some of us has cars, some of us take vacations. Okay? That property is our pursuit of happiness. And John Locke's writing about it in England. Our founding fathers are looking for principles to base our laws in. In 1618, in Virginia, Jamestown, a colony of Englishmen gathered together. And this is what Kathy was speaking about here. Self-government. They realize the need for government. They are an ocean away from their country. They're an ocean away from their king. They're an ocean away from their courts, from parliament. They need laws in America. They established a representative body for making their laws. The first idea of republic comes to America in 1618, the House of Burgesses. The Mayflower Compact. 2 years later, 1620, a group of pilgrims coming to Jamestown, coming to the Virginia territory, get blown off course. It could be divine, it could be providence, it could be bad luck. Somehow they end up in Massachusetts, way north of where they wanted to go. They're outside of where their charter says that they are able to be. There's no law for them. They realize as a group of people they're going to need law. They're going to need to make laws that will apply to people and keep themselves safe. 42 men, I believe, sign this document. And all the document says is we're going to need to make laws. We're going to make laws that are just for all people. And we're going to agree to obey those laws before they even step off the boat, before they even start to build a home, to establish a colony, to establish a community. They realize we're going to need laws, but the laws need to be just and fair for all people, and all people need to agree to obey it. Again, we're seeing that foundation, and at 1620, we've got 156 years before we get to our revolution. But we see that American idea of self-government starting in Virginia, in Massachusetts. The Great Awakening, 1720, 1740. Religion takes an incredible revival. And what the Great Awakening is all about is individual liberty. The idea that God speaks directly to people. It's not a new idea in 1720. Anne Hutchinson in Massachusetts is run out of Massachusetts for preaching that God can speak directly to people. Anne Hutchinson is driven out of Massachusetts and goes to Rhode Island. Thomas Hooker, driven out of Massachusetts because he wants to see a religion that you don't have to join the church to be able to vote. We see religion being used to emphasize the idea of individual liberty, that we are all created equal. You call your creator whatever you want to, but we're all created equal, and we all live in that same community, and we're all still abiding by those same laws. The Great Awakening, this is George Whitefield, had to be held outside. Most churches would not allow Whitefield to preach inside their church. He was radical. Jonathan Edwards preaching fire and brimstone outside. Mostly because churches wouldn't allow them to preach inside, but also because churches couldn't hold the number of people that were coming to this. They were eager for that energy, for that idea that I'm my own self. I am an individual, and I am important in the world, and I am not a servant to no man. I am a compatriot to all men.